Have you ever seen something while you're driving and it makes sense for it to be there, but it doesn't make sense as to where it is? A gentleman gave me a story about a individual, singular, by itself light post on the side of a highway. It was a state highway, so off to the side. He was driving and he wasn't paying attention and he ran out of fuel. He pulls his car over, and because he's in the middle of nowhere, doesn't really know what to do with himself. So he sees the light post up ahead, figures I'll get out of the car, I'll walk over there, see if I can get some cell phone service. And he does just that, takes his keys out, all that, and he's walking towards this light post. Now, he wasn't really paying much attention to it, because he's just out here, surrounded by corn and wheat on either side of this little 2-lane road. Not even really a shoulder to pull off on. He kind of pulled off in the mud. And right before he actually makes it to this light post, it's about 30 feet from where he ran out of fuel. So he looks up. He's got his phone in his hand. He's trying to get service. But he looks up and he notices that the light's flickering. Not bad, or even out of sync. He realizes right as he steps into it that it was matching his footsteps. Every step he took, the last 5 steps to get to the light, it kind of clicked in his head that it was flickering every time his foot hit the ground. Which is very odd. So he's standing there under the light and he taps his feet. The lights flicker. He's checking the pole out, trying to see if he's not an electrician by any means, but he's looking around at this light pole. It's one of those ones that it's a wood pole and the light comes out and arches down, and it's got one of those really old amber orange lights to it. It's not any like the modern ones you see now with the bright white LEDs. It's a older light, and he said it looked like it'd been there a while. He looks at the top. It's got spider webs all over it. It's got vines growing around it from the bottom, but he doesn't see a power box or any kind of wiring on it anywhere. So he thinks, maybe the wires run underground, but that just doesn't really make sense for one pole out here by itself. So he's looking around at it. He's trying to see if he can find an electric cord or something he can follow, or just kind of see where it comes from. And there's nothing. But while he's looking around, just past the circle of light that he's standing in, he does see what looks like a dirt road that goes in between 2 patches of, looks like corn on one side and wheat on the other. Now, he's in rural Indiana, just in case anyone's wondering, and this gentleman's name is Jacob. So Jacob can't get signal. He's out of fuel. It's the middle of the night on a weekday. The odds of someone driving past him on this road are almost non-existent. If you don't live out here, you got no business being out here. Now, Jacob doesn't live out there. He was just passing through, but he just wasn't paying attention to his fuel. So while he's messing with his phone, he notices the light flickers just once. He thinks to himself, okay, that's strange, but he thinks maybe it was his own foot, because again, every time he moves his leg, puts his foot back down, the light flickers. So he figured maybe when I shifted my weight, and he's looking around at the floor for a pressure sensor or something, because it doesn't make any sense how this light is flickering to his foot hitting the ground. Just doesn't make any logical sense. Looking back at his phone, and every once in a while he'll get a little hit of like 5G, a little bit for like a couple seconds, and then by the time the call starts to go through for like a tow truck, it goes away. He loses signal, he loses the page the tow truck's phone number's on, everything. So he's panicking at this point because he's not in any familiar territory and he's stuck out here. No idea which way to walk, no idea which way to go. He's got some snacks and some water bottles in his car for the road trip he was on. So he's thinking, okay, I guess I'm just going to have to sleep in my car for now because there's nowhere to go. So he takes one step towards his car, and he hears this strange cackling sound. Not like a hyena, or it was definitely human. But he said it sounded like a deranged person was somewhere in the cornfield giggling at him. So he turns and looks, obviously freaked out. He yells out, who's there? No response. While he's looking into the cornfield, the light flickers 2 more times. But he doesn't hear any footsteps at all. So he starts calling out a bit more firmly about, hey, I have a weapon. He didn't have a weapon. But nothing. So he's like, all right, maybe it's just in my head. I'm freaked out. I'm out here. It's dark. My mind's playing tricks on me. I'm tired. Takes another step, and now he's right on the edge of that circle of light from this light pole. And he said, right before his foot left the circle, he heard the cackle one more time, and it sounded closer. And he turned to look, and he saw what looked like something silvery, almost slightly sparkly, kind of glisten in the moonlight. And he's looking at it, he's locking eyes on it, and he looks up a little bit more, and he sees these eyes, wide eyes, with black irises, black pupils, but eyes just not your typical like a manic, psychotic look. And he of course takes a step back into the light. The light flickers, and for that split second when that light flickered, he could swear it got closer. He didn't hear anything though, no footstep, and now he can see its face, like almost completely in the moonlight. And this guy, completely unclothed, built like the statue of David, but his skin was completely covered in like glistening silver paint. This guy looked like the statue. He said it looked like the statue. This is what Jacob told me when he told me the story. He said it looked like the statue of David, bald, with crazy eyes, a smile way too big for a human face, and as if the statue was made of silver. He couldn't see the guy's stomach or chest move from breathing. It was just looking straight at him with this ear-to-ear smile. He could see every tooth in his head just staring at him. Jacob is petrified. He doesn't know what to do. So he starts yelling out, like, I have a weapon, I'll effing kill you, don't come near me, I swear to God, I'm calling the cops right now. And he's pretending to call the cops on his phone with no reception. And he's like, you better get out of here, they're gonna, you stay away from me. Doesn't blink, doesn't move, nothing. And in that moment, he also realized something else. the entire time that he had been standing in this circle of light, he didn't hear crickets. He didn't hear birds. He didn't feel or even hear a breeze. It was dead still, dead silent. And it didn't really resonate with him until this moment that it's so quiet. So he's having basically a small panic attack, holding this phone, dialing no one to his ear, staring at this man, and he doesn't know what to do. The car's far away, so he takes another step back, and the light flickers again. And this time, when the light comes back on, because it only blinks for like a second, it's literally like an eye blink, guy's gone. Didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no one running through the corn, which is quite literally impossible. Didn't hear anything. Didn't see anything. But he's gone. So he gets the idea, okay, maybe I can run to my car. And he puts his keys in between his fingers, so he's got a weapon, kinda. Better than nothing. And he's like, I'm gonna make a break for the car, and I'll lock the car, and, I'll be safer. At least I'll be enclosed, Not a lot of people possess the strength to bare knuckle punch their way through a car window. So he prepares himself, and he leans, and he's getting ready to run to his car. And right before he takes that first step, he realizes that what looks like not the back seat, he sees the guy looking at him through the back window, through the windshield at him, still dead eye contact. So he's not in the car, he's perched up on the back like an animal on the trunk of the car, looking at him. So the car's no longer an option, but then now he starts thinking, how the hell did he get over there that fast and not make a sound? How did his car alarm not go off? Usually, he's got a newer vehicle, you get out of your car and lock it, someone jumps on the hood of on the trunk of your car, normally that would set off the car alarm. Nothing. Not a thing. So at this point, he starts to finally, I think from the way he worded it when he was telling me the story, he said the pieces were falling into place. And he realized that he was in the midst of something horrific and definitely not of this world. So he decides the only play that he has is to stay in the light of this pole until the sun comes up. He looks at his phone, because even without signal, your phone will still tell time normally. It's literally like 10 o'clock at night. So if he stays there, he's going to have to stand there in the light with this thing running around for at least 8 hours, he said. At that time of year, figure 8 a.m. was around when the sun would come up. So, yeah, he's like, I'm not going to make it. He's basically having a panic attack while this is all happening. He's as anyone would, he's freaking out. Then he gets another idea. And I personally don't know why he thought this was a good idea, but he's like, that dirt path. Maybe if I run down it fast enough, there's a house at the end or a barn or something. But he just doesn't want to be out here in the open with this thing, this guy. So he turns away from the guy and looks at the path, takes a step towards it. The light flickers the moment he takes a step, and he realizes again he kind of screwed up because now he's not watching this thing. So he turns over his shoulder to look at his car. He's gone. And he's combing through the corn, he's combing through the wheat. He's looking everywhere he can to try to get a bead on where he is. He doesn't see him anywhere. He decides he's gonna take a couple deep breaths, and he's gonna go for it. So he takes 3 big breaths and guns it full tilt, and he can hear his footsteps every time, and his foot would make contact with the ground. It would go pitch black for a second, and the light would come back on. Now he gets to the path and he hooks a little bit of a right, like a little offset. Now he can no longer see the ambient light from the pole, and he's running down this semi-muddy dirt road in between this corn patch and this wheat field, and he is just hauling. And luckily, once he got turned to get down the path to run straight ahead, he sees what looks like an older, kind of like a double wide trailer, but it was more of a house. Like, you could tell it was a house, but it was about the size of a double wide trailer. And he just runs for his life. But as he continues to run, and he gets about 15 feet, maybe 20 feet away from the where the fields individually end, and there's like a little clearing before you get to the house, he sees what looks like the guy on his left, and he just instinctively turns right and runs into the cornfield. Now he's running through the corn, and he's running, he's screaming bloody murder at this point, screaming for anyone, hoping that someone's in that house and that they'll hear him. So he's just running blindly through the corn, screaming his lungs out, and after like 20 seconds or so, he says he felt like he was on fire. His whole body felt like it was on fire, and he didn't know if it was like his muscles burning or if it was fear or adrenaline. He didn't know. He just felt he described it to me as he felt like someone literally doused him in diesel and just lit it, or not diesel, gas. Like, he went from just running and being slightly out of breath to feeling like he was literally just immolation, just pure heat. So he's looking, and of course he's looking around, but he can't see anything. Not only is it dark out, all he's got is the light of like the moon, but he's in the cornfield, so even that's not helping. He just knows he feels pain everywhere, and he's running and running and running. He finally breaks free of the cornfield, and he's looking at the same house, which doesn't make sense at all, because the house was in front of him. He turned right and ran into the corn, so he should have ran through the cornfield. And mind you, in Indiana, some of these places, cornfields can go on for acres and acres and acres. I've driven through some states where you could drive for a solid 40 minutes at 60 miles an hour, and it's the same cornfield the whole time. So for him to break free and still be staring at the same house, he doesn't think much of it. He just keeps gunning it towards the house. He doesn't think, he's like, maybe I got turned around. If you ever ran through a cornfield, don't recommend it. If you ever run through a cornfield, it is easy to get turned around. So he's like, okay, maybe I just hooked a left and didn't realize it. He gets to the front door of the house, and he's banging on the door. He's like slamming on it. And the front porch light turns on. So he's like, "Let me help, there's a guy chasing me, he's crazy. And no one answers the door. So he stops banging on the door for a second, and he's just like, hello? Like, let me in. Come on, help. No one answers the door. But the front porch light starts to flicker. Really fast. He puts 2 and 2 together. It's chasing me. He basically rips off. He said he grabbed the handle of the screen door and he pulled it so hard that the whole door just came off. He ripped off the screen door and grabbed the handle to this house and turned it, pushed it in. It was unlocked. He walks in, slams the door behind him, locks it, and immediately starts feeling around. Click, turns on the lights to the house. The lighting is the exact same lighting as the pole outside. Old amber orange. And he's looking around this house. It's mildly furnished, doesn't look too dirty. Looks unlived in, but lived in, if that makes sense. Like maybe it's a vacation home and they only live in it like a little while at a time. So he just starts running through the house, turning on all the lights, locking all the windows, locking all the doors, and he's tearing through the kitchen looking for a kitchen knife. Smart. So he's tearing through the kitchen. He finds a nice long like steak knife. He pulls that out and he starts looking around again. And this is how we know it was a house. He sees a door in the kitchen. He opens that and he looks down and it's stairs to the basement. So there's a basement. So it definitely wasn't a double wide. So he goes, like, he's debating in his head, like, should I stay up here where the lights are? Should I run down there and hide? And it didn't occur to him until after he started going downstairs, because he decided to opt for the basement, which, again, I don't know why he picked that, but he runs down the stairs. You know, he finds a little light switch, he clicks it, turns on the light. There's a couple things down there, not much, not many places to hide, really. There is, however, what looks like a old school, like, whiskey barrel, like the old wood barrels with the iron wraps. He takes the lid off. It's empty. He crawls inside. He puts the lid back on top of himself, and he just catches his breath. And he's sitting there in this barrel all scrunched up. Just so you guys can understand too, this gentleman Jacob who was telling me the story was not a very big guy. So if you know the size of those old school whiskey barrels, he would have fit, not comfortably, but he would have fit and been able to close it. So he stays there just catching his breath for what feels like hours, probably minutes. The adrenaline starts to wear off and he starts thinking a little bit more clearly, and he's like, I'm an idiot. I was just in the house. I should have looked for a phone, like a landline. He still has his cell phone on him, so he pulls out his cell phone and he's checking his phone. No signal. You're in a basement. You had no signal before, but now you're in a basement. So he opts to just stay there. Now, he said right around the time he started to get a little tired and he felt like he was starting to fall asleep now that the adrenaline was wearing off, he said he must have waited about 3 hours. He checked his phone. It was like 2:40 in the morning, 3 almost. He almost nods off at one point. What makes him wake up is the basement light flickers. And again, he still hears nothing. He doesn't hear air conditioning. He doesn't hear wind outside. He doesn't hear anything. He said it was so quiet I could hear the blood pumping into my heart and my own ears. It was almost so quiet I thought I was in like a sensory deprivation tank. Like it was so quiet I could hear myself, which is weird. But the basement light flickers. And he's just like, no, the lights are on. But then he finally hears something. And it sounds like a window upstairs broke. He hears busted glass. He's panicked now. Now he's really panicked. So he decides, okay, if this guy comes down here and he opens this barrel, I'm shoving this knife right up his schnoz. right in his face. He can see a little bit through the slits in the wood on the barrel. A little bit. As the light flickers again and again and again, like on the 5th or 6th time it flickers, the guy's just there. He didn't hear him come down the stairs. He didn't see him come down the stairs. He just blinked there. And he's not looking at Jacob. He's kind of looking like a little bit past him. And he's looking this guy in the eye. And he said it was the most inhuman looking eyes I have ever seen. He said they were way too wide. They were way too big. I could see like all the white around the pupil of the eye. And the eyes were black. There was no blue, brown. It was black. But in the black, you could see like a small red little like swirl. And he wasn't sure if that was the amber light reflecting off of his eyes or if it was part of his pupil, but there was like a red semicircle that went around each pupil, or where he assumed a pupil would be. But other than that, he looked human. He was built like a Greek god, ripped, not super ripped, like really lean, really cut. He wasn't like bodybuilder. He was like the statue of David, just a guy who's in really good shape. Bald as an egg, but his skin was completely covered in what looked like this sparkling silver paint from head to toe. And I mean everywhere, if you get my drift. Because again, guy's not wearing any clothes. And he's looking at him, no hair, no eyebrows, no beard, no hair, not even down below, nothing, hairless. And he's kind of hunched over a little bit. He's not moving. He's not breathing. Like he's saying, like I was looking at his stomach. Guy wasn't breathing. He was a statue with this huge smile on his face, where you could see every molar in his mouth, even the gums and everything. He's like, I've never seen a human be able to pull their lips back that far without actually putting their fingers in their mouth and pulling back. Like he was doing it on his own. Normally a person would need to, he is just ready to poop himself, right? He's squeezing that knife, like his body starts to burn again, like he's trying everything in his power not to wince or moan in pain. He is in so much pain, and he doesn't know why. All of a sudden, the light flickers, the guy's gone. So, Jacob at this point, starting to go from scared to angry to that phase in between angry and brave, and decides, okay, I'm going to get out of this barrel because this thing is clearly not human, and if I stab it in the face and that's not enough to kill it, I'm literally a fish in a barrel. So as quietly as he can, he gets out of this barrel and fails miserably. The barrel tips over, he rolls out, cuts himself with the knife, and grabs it again, stands back up, the light starts to flicker, and he hides behind what looks like a cabinet that was on the other side of the stairs going down the basement. So he's kind of like up against the corner of the basement and this cabinet, holding the knife. And he can see this thing, or this guy's feet on like the middle of the stairs. Like boom, there's the feet. And he's staring at this guy's feet. And he starts to look around. Jacob's like looking around like, yo, okay, I got my knife. Is there anything else? And as he looks down, he is covered in blood. Not from just the cut from the knife he gave himself on accident. Covered in blood. Like, his shirt, his pants, he is drenched in blood. There was nothing in the barrel. So he kind of like looks away from him for a second. He's checking himself like, what the absolute hell? His palms are covered in blood. He wipes his forehead. Apparently his head is covered in blood. He was covered in hundreds of what looked like razor blade cuts. Super thin, super fine cuts that were just puking blood. and he's looking on the floor, and he realizes he left a literal blood trail from the stairs to the barrel, from the barrel to where he is now. If this thing wants to find him, there is nothing gonna, like, you don't have to be a genius to just literally follow the blood trail, but this thing's not moving. It's just standing on the stairs. And he starts thinking, like, it could have got me in the barrel. If it followed the blood trail, it could have got me in the barrel. Why didn't it? So he stands there for the better part of like 10 minutes or so. And then he hears something that made him almost want to scream with glee. He hears what sounds like police cars at a distance, but coming. And he's thinking to himself, like, my phone's been dead this whole time. I can't call the cops. So he's just like, thank God. Lights flicker. Things gone. He's like, all right, let's do this. Police are coming. So he gets the wherewithal to run up the stairs, and every time his feet hits the ground, the lights flicker, and he's just thinking, like, this thing's gonna pop up behind me and rip my head off or something. Runs up the stairs, and he's upstairs, he's in the kitchen, and he runs over to the sink and, like, turns so he can, like, his back is covered, and he's just, like, surveying everything he can see, the living room, the hallway, whatever, and he sees the broken window that this thing apparently busted out, and he doesn't see this silver man anywhere, so he gets another burst of bravery and goes to run out the front door. As he runs out the front door, though, he notices a little box next to the front door. Looks like an alarm box. Now, again, he's so far out in the middle of nowhere, the police response time kind of makes sense, because it's an abandoned place. Well, not abandoned, it's not a occupied place. So if the police knew it wasn't occupied and the break-in alarm went off, with a house out in the middle, they wouldn't care. It'd be really low on the priority list. So that kind of clicked in his head as, oh, when I opened the door, or like he broke that window, it must have set off the silent alarm. So he's running down this dirt path again, trying to get to where he sees the flashing red and blues. They're getting really close now. And he's running and running and running and running and running. He finally gets out, and he busts out of down the dirt path into the road, and one of the cop cars almost runs him over. And they immediately, cops get out. He's, of course, oh, you guys gotta help me. You understand? He's over there. And he's trying to explain himself. And the cops, they pull their guns out, and they're pointing them at him, and they're like, get on the ground, get on the ground. And he's like, no, I need help. He's over there. He's trying to kill me. And the cop's like, we will shoot you, get on the ground now. So he finally just drops to his knees, and it clicks in his head. He just ran out of a cornfield covered in blood with a knife in his hand. So, yeah, the cops aren't exactly going to be listening to him. They get him on the ground, they take the knife, they cuff him up, they start asking him questions and they put him in the back of the car, whatever. They think he's like high off his ass on PCP or something. They're like, this guy's cuckoo for quackers. He's out. The cheese has slid off his cracker. The only thing they were really able to pick up on is, okay, that car over there is his. So fast forward, they let old buddy go down to the station. They put him in a cell. He's chilling, still trying to explain himself to anyone who will walk past his cell. And they're like, look, you could talk about it in the morning. We'll get you some clean clothes. You can take a shower, whatever. But for right now, you're staying right there and shut the hell up. So he finally conks out and gets some sleep. Wakes up in the morning. They spray him down to get all the dried blood off of him. And they realize that it was his blood, and that, nothing like high-pressured water to remind you of the literal 1,000 paper cuts you're covered in. So they call in an ambulance, they check him out, and he's not severely wounded, but he is covered hundreds of these like razor blade thin paper cuts, arms, ribs, stomach, back, legs. It's almost like when he was running through the cornfield, it was like the leaves on the corn stalks were made of metal, and he was just chopping himself up. So after all this talking and everything and whatever, and they finally bring him in front of a judge, and the judge is like, look, you're here for breaking and entering, and we don't know what the deal with the knife and the blood and the whatever, but and finally Jacob starts to tell his story, and everyone in the courtroom is looking at him like, okay. The only person that seems to be taking him super seriously is the judge. And the judge tells him, like, what made you stop? And he's like, I ran out of gas. And he's like, and you went to the light post and stayed there? And he's like, yeah, then I went and I saw the silver man. And the judge is just kind of listening, like half, he couldn't tell if he was interested or not interested. Like the best way he could describe it was the judge was listening, but he had a look on his face of almost like half disappointment and half just frustration. And he's like, man, I'm about to get locked up in a state that's not my hometown for breaking and entering. So after everything's done, they put him back in the cell downstairs. The judge basically told him, like, we're going to think about this and what you have to say. We're going to send people out there, whatever. Now, he gave him the bail, the bond, I forgot. But they said for him, if he wants to get out, he's got to fork up like $3,000. He's like, don't have it. Don't carry that on me. So while he's sitting downstairs chilling, all of a sudden one of the guys opens the thing and he's like, hey, you made bail. And he's like, I didn't call anybody. I don't know anyone around here. They give him back, they don't give him back his clothes because his clothes were shot. But they give him some clothes. They give him back his wallet, his keys, his phone. And they sent him outside. And he's looking around to see if whoever bailed him out is outside. And lo and behold, all he sees is the judge, but in normal clothes now. And the judge is like, hey, I bailed you out. And he's like, why? He's like, I don't want to and don't care to explain this to you. I'm going to get a jerry can and fill it up with gas. I'm going to take you back to your car. I'm going to put the gas in your car, and you are going to drive out of here. And you are never going to come back. Ever. And Jacob's like, okay, I don't even know what town I'm in. Sure. Hops in the judge's pickup truck. They drive out to his car, and immediately the first thing that Jacob notices is there is no house. There is no cornfield. There is no pole. It's just his car parked on the side of the road in the mud, next to an open grass field, with nothing there. So he again starts to have basically a panic attack and starts peppering this judge with questions like, where did it all go? There was a house and the pole and the cornfield, the wheat field. Where did everything go? The judge literally just looks at him and says, do you really want the answer to that question, or do you want to get out of here? Jacob kind of like debates it for a second because the curiosity is killing him, but at the same token, he doesn't want to go to jail in a town he doesn't know in the middle of nowhere. And that's it. The judge puts the gas in his car, and he tells the judge, like, am I going to have like an outstanding warrant or something for my arrest? And the judge's like, don't worry about it, just get out of here. And Jacob drove and drove and drove and drove until he almost ran out of gas again. Stopped at a gas station like 5 towns over. And he said he couldn't go back to that town if he wanted to. He doesn't remember how he got there to begin with. He was just taking the back roads. And he said that was the craziest thing that he had ever had happen to him. Everyone he told it to thought he was crazy. And he said that that silver dude haunts his nightmares to this day. And this happened, he said, like 6 years ago. Well, not 6 years ago. No. Yeah, 5 years ago. Well, something like 5 years ago. I don't know. But recent. Not that far off. Recently. Within the past 5 years or so. Jacob's a roamer. He doesn't have a house. He kind of just road trips. Does some odd jobs. Gets money for gas. Moves on. He's a nomad. Lives in his car pretty much. Excuse me. So, yeah, just that's wild. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, as I always do with my trucker tales, I give my opinion on it, and I try to logically rationalize it. Logically, I will admit, again, that Jacob's not his real name, but again, I never use the real names. I try never to disclose the full details of the locations I talk about. Jacob looked a little bit like a heavy hallucinogenic user, if you get my drift. You know, like, based on his clothes, like, and his hair, and just kind of the way he talked, he struck me as someone who definitely smokes the sauce, if you get my drift, which weed wouldn't do that to you, but you know what I mean. Now, I could be completely wrong. He could be bone sober, for all I know. I'm purely going off of the way he talked, his appearance, his demeanor. I wouldn't be surprised if he just had a bad trip, and that's why he didn't recognize that he ran out of gas. That's why he made some really dumb choices during this whole encounter. Now, there is the other side of it. There are a lot of trucker tales out there of lone light poles and the weird things that happen with them, and how most people can never find them again when they drive past it. I've met quite a few people. Now, they've never gotten out of their cars and investigated or like looked, but I have met a lot of people out there who have talked about, like, yeah, you'll be driving down some lone state highway in the middle of nowhere, and you'll see just a random light pole. No reason for it to be there. Like, in this case, it kind of made a little sense because it was next to a dirt road leading to a home. But a lot of the stories that I hear about these random lone lights, as they're called, the lone lights, they usually are a bad omen, or they are a dinner bell for something evil, like that little dangly thing on an anglerfish. They are not to be trifled with. They are not to be messed with. And most of the time, you'll see them and they look completely normal, but they're just in a place they're not supposed to be. And they don't make sense as to why they're there. So, warning of my story. If you're ever out driving in the middle of nowhere and you see a random light pole that looks normal but has no reason to be where it is, keep driving. Alright, y'all. Sorry for the long hiatus. I'm working with a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, and he's learning how to be an editor, and he's helping me with my channel. You may have noticed my thumbnails have gotten a lot cooler. And he's going to help me with video quality, audio, all that stuff. So, keep in touch. There will be more stories. I do have more stories. And we should get back to a relatively normal upload schedule. But don't hold me on that. You guys know how it is. If you've watched my previous videos, you know trucker life is kind of tough. Sometimes I have the time, but the reefer unit's too loud, or the lighting's just terrible. So, but thank you for listening. If you are listening while you are driving, please drive safe. And if you are watching this while you're driving, you're going to hit a light pole. Have a good night.